Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. We're at the Orion Township Municipal Complex Boardroom at 2323 Joslin Road. Can I have a roll call, please?
Reynolds?
Here.
Gross?
Here.
St. Henry?
Here.
Urbanowski?
Here.
Walker?
Here.
Bracken?
Here.
Gingell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. That leads us to item number 3 on our agenda. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes from our February 2nd meeting, both our regular meeting minutes and our joint public hearing meeting minutes from PC case 2021-78, The Woodlands. Any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Angel. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please state with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That leads us to item number 4 on our agenda for our agenda review and approval. Any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move we approve the agenda as submitted.
Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Walker. Further discussion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please state with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Is there any brief public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we will move right along. We have no items on our consent agenda tonight, which leads us to new business 7A for PC case 2022-05, Quattro Development Retail Building Site Plan located on a vacant parcel located north of 4983 South Baldwin Road, Sidwell 0932-377-057. If the applicant is present, if you'd like to step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have a presentation for us?
I do.
Okay. That would be... See if this works. Oh.
First try. Okay, hi, my name is Peter Pavick. I'm with Quattro Development. We are a commercial real estate developer outside of the Chicagoland area. So we want to build out a Sleep Number retail store here. It's more of a showroom, actually, at this property site. So I know we've sent site plans to the Planning Commission. We've gotten some comments back from different groups. So I'm here to kind of address those comments and keep the conversation going.
Okay. If you want to hit on some of those comments, you can now. If not, we'll turn it over to our consultants for their reviews. And so if you want to kind of hit those at the front end, you're welcome to. If not, we'll circle back.
Sure. I mean, if the consultants want to lead the conversation, then go through those comments. I think that's probably the smoothest way to kind of go through it.
Okay.
If you prefer to do it that way.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we'll turn it over to our consultants for their overview on the project, starting with Giffords Webster, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Be going through our review, hitting some of the highlights. A couple items we identify in our summary at the top of page 2. Just want to confirm that the interior light fixtures have the bronze color, which is a requirement of the biz district. That's just a detail. And also just making sure there's a note that indicates compliance with the underground utility requirement from the biz district. In terms of Planning Commission discussion, a few additional items as well. Number 3 is one of the things that we identified when we looked at the lighting plan is there's no lighting at all in front of the building along the safety path. In that area, it's basically 0 foot candles. Do you want to talk about any low-level lighting that might be provided in that area, just as a matter of providing some level of illumination there? Here you bring in the lighting plan up. Be the last one, won't it? No?
I'm sorry, I don't see that I have it.
Oh, no, you don't have that, okay. Anyway, there it is.
Here we go. Sorry.
Yeah, so if you zoom in right in the very front there, see how it's all 0 foot candles in the front, and that's where your safety path is. I don't know if you had any illumination on the front of the building that might illuminate some of that area that may not be reflected in this plan?
Yeah, typically we have, if there's a exit door on this side, we'll have some sort of lights there, but they're not, they're typically not shown in the photometric plan. This is actually the back of the building here that faces.
Oh, it's the front-facing part.
Sure.
Yeah,
The
that's why I consider it the front, because it's facing the front yard, basically, front-facing towards Baldwin Road, but.
Yeah, we would be happy to add lighting here if that
It's
makes
not being reflected.
everyone more comfortable. You know, it's always nice to have lighting all the way around.
Yeah, yeah, as Mr. Landis indicated, there may be lighting that's on Baldwin that's not, obviously, it's not proposed on this, so it's not being reflected in what's actually there. Just a discussion item, something to think about whether or not maybe some minor adjustments could be made to at least have some minor level of illumination there. Also, a couple items related to the tightness of the site. As you can see, the site is very tight. It's a small site. It's a good infill project, I think, for this type of site. But one of the things that raises the question, refuse collection with a truck going in, how is that going to be timed in terms of hours, because circulation is tight? Also, in terms of loading and unloading, where will that take place? What are the hours of loading and unloading? How is that going to work? If it's during off hours, then that's a different situation. But like I said, would like to hear from the applicant about how the loading and unloading plan works, and same thing with the dumpster and the collection of that.
So yeah, and I think the fire marshal also brought up that the site is a little tight and circulation could be difficult. In terms of the offloading and loading, this store is more of a showroom, so there's no actual stock in the back, so there's not going to be making deliveries regularly. Folks will come in, try out a mattress, find one that they like, order it, and then it gets delivered to their house from a warehouse. So there won't be any stock and any box trucks coming in and out. As far as trash delivery goes, the turning radiuses work for the site. Here we have a garbage truck kind of shown making its maneuvers to get into that dumpster enclosure. So it works, you're right, it is kind of tight and awkward, but the site in general is pretty tight and awkward. From our understanding, there's a 30-foot access easement that, based on the site plan from the adjacent site, the Huntington Bank there, that's easement has not been finalized yet. I think when we develop this space, we have the opportunity to use that easement somewhere. But right now we have it shown where it's been originally plotted, so that's kind of what we're thinking. But yeah, again, it's a tight site. There aren't a ton of options here, so be open to any input from the group here.
Yeah, so obviously, if the dumpster is being emptied during off hours, it's not an issue. Otherwise, those two spaces there where the turning has to happen, those could be employee spaces, and they could move their car if they need to. That kind of takes care of that. But this is an unusual site. It's tight, but as long as that's being addressed, it appears that that's something that's generally manageable. And then there's a series of waivers that we've identified. They specifically identified the front yard setback 40 feet to 30 and a half feet, side yard setback 20 feet to 15 feet, and then the waiver to reduce the required parking from 16 to 13 spaces. And then some other ones that have been identified include permitting a type B use as a standalone retail on a lot less than 10 acres, and to have it on a lot without a primary use. Obviously, that's part of the whole ancillary. You've had that issue come up before. Waiver required to waive the minimum lot width for Group B ancillary use, and then to reduce the parking setback from 20 feet to 6 feet. That's another waiver. Once again, this is a tight site. There's not a lot you're going to be able to do on this without some type of consideration. We like the way the building's placed because it relates well to the buildings to the north. They're aligned fairly closely, so it seems to make sense. Having the parking in the back seems to make sense. And this is not a really high parking generator. We don't necessarily have a lot of concerns about the waiver of the number of parking spaces. given the type of use that it is. So that's the summary of our comments.
Okay, thank you very much. With that said, let's turn it over to OHM for their review. Mark?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Similarly, you know, we didn't have too many issues overall with the plan. We felt the plan was in compliance with township ordinances. We just had a handful of comments that we were asking to be included in any type of an approval. And I'll just run through those individually, I guess, and explain those and answer questions if you have. Number one was that the detention basin outlet connecting to Baldwin Road storm sewer, instead of outletting, currently they're showing the underground storage outletting to grade and then going across the safety path along the frontage with a trench drain, and then, you know, spilling out onto grade. If this were a more rural location, or there's a stream nearby or wetland, you know, some consideration could be given for something like that, but given the developed nature of this site, it doesn't fit. So it really needs to be tied into the existing storm sewer in Baldwin Road. Number two, we're asking that they provide some preliminary detention calculations on the site plan, just to show that they have, you know, feasibly have enough room. Number three, site plan requires that cross sections for pavements on the plan be included. Number four, there is a pavement cross-section for the dumpster. It's only shown as 6-inch. Your standards require that to be 8. And number five, we're asking that the drive aisle be increased to a minimum width of 22 feet, exclusive of curb and gutter. As the driveway comes up and turns, it gets pinched right at that northern turning movement. It's less than 22 feet, so we're asking that to be widened. Number six, there's a utility materials table on the cover sheet that does not line up with the standards required by the township. So since it's been included, we're asking that it be revised so they know going into engineering what materials they're going to be able to use. Number seven, it was our recommendation that the applicant actually relocate the cross-access easement and realign the driveway to be kind of, I would suggest that they move it to the east, especially hearing now from the applicant that that may not even be recorded at this time. I think it would be nice if they moved it east to kind of align with the northern 3 parking stalls, just so it's a straight shot in as opposed to this awkward turning movement. And then number 8, like Rod also mentioned, we're asking for some information on how loading, unloading was going to work. And then number 9, that is a standard note that engineering plans would be required. That is all I had, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you very much. There was a review from our Fire Marshal, Jeff Williams. He had a recommendation for approval, but had comments. Noted that the fire department has areas of concern in regard to the parking lot layout. It is the fire department's recommendation that the planning commission require the applicant to reconfigure the parking lot to allow our ambulance better maneuverability when exiting the site. There was a public services review by Jeff Stout, and there was a site plan recorded. Our site walk committee completed a review of the project. Quick question for you, Mr. Landis. Do you believe your recommended changes address the fire marshals, or are you not familiar with his comments that he's put in his review?
No, we did talk ahead of time, so I'm familiar with his concerns. So I believe if the applicant were to show some turning movements for an ambulance and realign the driveway like we were talking to avoid the right-hand turn there, that we would be in, the fire marshal and I are on the same page, basically.
Understood. Okay, so since there was a very brief presentation up front and you wanted to go through some reviews, if there's some response. Obviously, there were some comments here. The list from OHM being one of them, some understanding on the loading and unloading that's to occur. Same thing with hours in which the dumpster would be essentially emptied. And then question on the sense of adding potential additional illumination to the front facade, which is considered the rear from the building use, but fronts the primary street.
Sure, and I'd be happy to talk to you, the engineer's comments as well. So just starting with the fire marshal's comments, figure we can knock that out here. Here we have the turning radiuses for a Ford F-150, which I imagine is a little bit smaller than an ambulance. But the site is, again, awkward, but it is maneuverable. Something that we had kind of thought about internally was if we do decide to replan the site entrance, how does that affect the review process that we've already gone through, or do we have to basically start from zero with the review process, or how does that kind of affect our current standing?
So from a formal standpoint, obviously, we're here to review the plans as submitted. There's comments being brought forth, so there is the potential that a motion may be made to essentially a conditional approval that those comments be addressed, to essentially address our consultant's reviews. So that's a determination that we would make and consider when making a motion.
Okay. All right. And then, so that, the turning radiuses are kind of what they are in this current configuration. Like I said, we have kind of considered some alternates, which I'm not sure if I have open currently. Nope. This is an alternate plan that we've kind of considered. We didn't have a ton of time to review it, but shifting the drive entrance a little to the east eliminates those 3 spots at the entrance, but then kind of smooths things out a little bit once you get into the site. We keep the 3 spots to the north and the trash enclosure where it is, and then we block out a couple spots here for the turning radius of the dump truck or garbage truck. So if this is kind of along the lines of something you think would be a little bit more appropriate, then we'd be happy to explore that a little bit more. Okay. And then to the engineer's other comments, I know he had mentioned the drainage from the site here, the trench drain underneath the sidewalk, and then discharging to grade here. From a feasibility standpoint, this seems to be the easiest, I don't want to say easiest way, but to do it the alternate way where we tie in 150 feet down the road to the Baldwin Road storm system. We'd be coming down and across this entrance to the Huntington Bank here, and then crossing all these other public utilities, water, sewer, I want to say electrical as well. Kind of threading the needle through those to get to this storm basin that's about 150 feet south of our current site. That being said, it's quite a challenge to do so, and we don't really know what else is under here and what other things we might run into. So that's why we kind of went with this trench drain idea. We noticed that the neighbors to the north also discharged to grade, but they have the elevation to do so. We're kind of constrained on elevation with the bottom of our underground detention with the rest of the grade here. So we see that this is the most constructible solution given the site constraints. That's kind of our response to that. It is a difficult site, and there isn't there's a storm basin down here to tie into, but it goes back to the Huntington Bank. That's part of their private storm retention system. So if the engineer could, look at it again or consider the site challenges, I think we'd all appreciate that.
Yeah, I guess my thought was that there would probably be already storm sewer out on Baldwin Road.
Mm-hmm.
And anticipate you having to go all the way down to Brown Road.
Yep. Yeah, as far as we know, this is the closest storm sewer that we can tie into that's a publicly available basin.
I'm pretty sure there's storm sewer along Baldwin Road. I guess we could try to see if we could help you find those plans, or have you reached out to the road commission to get a copy of their current plans, to look into that? Because I just don't like what's proposed right now.
Okay. Yeah, if you could, if you'd be willing to help, find those plans, we'd welcome that opportunity. And then to your comments, I think it was 2 through 5, all the details, we have no issues amending our plans to those comments. With the, I think it was a pavement section, the concrete section, the calculations for the storm detention. These are our preliminary plans, so we'd be happy to send that to you as soon as we have it updated. I'm drawing a blank on the other comments here. The
Detention calculations?
the detention calculations, yeah, we'd be happy to provide those. The entrance width here, we would edit this curb here to make that minimum 22 feet. I understand the radiuses here are kind of strange, so at one point it does kind of tighten up. We would either make this a mountable curb or cut it short and stripe it out to make sure that no one's running over that as they turn into the site. But if we go with this other layout, then I think that problem kind of fixes itself.
Yeah, I guess my recommendation would be to go with this alternative layout. That's what I was alluding to in my comment.
Agreed. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to my fellow planning commissioners for some additional thoughts and concerns, and then we'll discuss some open items. Initial thoughts? Mr. Bracken, go ahead.
I guess my concern is why is it the goal, I guess, to try to make Lake Orion the mattress center of the United States here? I mean, there's a True Sleep, there's a U.S. Mattress, there's a new one we just approved next to the car wash on Brown. There's a Sleep Number in Great Lakes Crossing, less than a mile from where you're gonna put this Sleep Number. Gardner White, less than a mile.
Mm-hmm.
What's the intent here?
Well, so from my understanding, the Sleep Number is in the mall that's kind of across the street. They're looking to get out of that kind of shopping center and have their own standalone location. The Sleep Number doesn't compete with like Mattress Firm or actual like mattress wholesalers or direct consumer sellers. They have a specified product that people come in and try out, and then it's shipped to their house. So I understand that mattress shops kind of pop up pretty regularly.
And then shut down.
What's that?
And then shut down.
And then shut down. So Sleep Number's intent here is to move out of that mall that's across the corner. Consumer preferences have been to not go into malls, I think, as we all kind of know that. So this is an opportunity for them to get onto the main frontage, get into, be more visible to the community, and have more visitors that way.
Mr. Gross?
Difficult site, completes the development around that corridor. Question is there a showroom window along Baldwin Road?
I can bring up the elevations here, but I do not believe that there is. So this would be looking from the west, Yeah, so there'll be some windows here that show, this is looking at the north, this is from the east, from the parking lot. So we have some windows. And then again, looking from the west, this entrance kind of wraps around. So there is some store window frontage along Baldwin Road there.
But no pedestrian access from Baldwin?
Correct.
It's all from the rear?
Correct.
Okay.
It's the same way for those, a lot of those other,
All the others are
Yeah.
also access from the rear?
Street presence.
Difficult site, like I said, it wraps up that part of the corridor. I like the alternate plan where the drive comes in straight as opposed to curves around. I think it makes more sense. And I think the suggested waivers are justifiable in terms of the site conditions, the size of the site and so forth. I guess in terms of mattress, it's a lot similar to gas stations, one on every corner, so. Or it used to be that way anyways.
Well, I mean, at least this is a unique product in the mattress industry. It's different than your typical mattress store.
Oh, okay.
I mean, right? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yep.
I happened to catch a Gardner, your opposition, Gardner White ad on the television this afternoon. And under one gentleman's presentation, it called him a certified bedding, BEDDING specialist.
Okay.
And do you know what that means?
Well, I imagine sleep is kind of a science, so
Okay.
maybe somebody who has studied the science behind a good night's sleep.
Because I had no idea if that was a college curriculum or not, but thank you.
It wasn't my course of study. but-
Okay, all right.
I have a couple of comments, a few items I would still like to have addressed. I would support essentially would support a conditional approval pending essentially the rework that's been requested by our consultants. I think the drive as proposed is awkward. I think the amended potential solution here tonight is a much improved. I would encourage even further exploration if there is that access easement about what can and can't occur there. So I guess I would be looking, it wouldn't be a bad thing to be proposing facade lighting along Baldwin Road along with the eastern portion. I think that's a reasonable request to have something on that side. Couple of other things that weren't noted that I think is important to this plan is a potential condition on loading and unloading, and the same thing goes with dumpsters, because we see this all the time where we have a limited site. I fully support that it's restricted, and there's a lot of these that are justifiable, but I think, loading and unloading in off hours, same thing with dumpster, because, we get into these where if there was a public safety issue here, you're a limited parking lot, there's already a turning radius. What happens when you get two things in there? There's already multiple turning movements to get into this development. So I guess it's parallel with the safety access issue, but I think it's pertinent to understand that loading and unloading would occur in off hours, or those are spaces marked as employee, as kind of previously mentioned, something that there's a plan of attack in place, because I wouldn't be in favor of just saying, I hope it works out. So, but with that said, additional thoughts, comments, questions? I guess, is there a thought in mind of loading and unloading, and the same thing with dumpster, about how that's approached versus just an open-ended, hope it works out?
Sure, yeah, we'd be happy to work with Sleep Number and figure out, their hours of operation, and work with the trash collection company figure out their timing, and make sure that we can, have them out there before or after working hours. Again, as far as unloading and unloading, we don't anticipate a lot of traffic in that regard once the building is up and running. Again, they set up their showroom, and then very rarely do they turn over products there. Again, they're not storing anything on site. They're not making any sales from the site there. So very minimal traffic, very minimal waste overall, once it's all set up. Of course, as they're setting up, they're going to have trucks in and out of there making deliveries and setting up the showroom and things like that. But once it's up and running, there will be minimal trucks coming in and out. But again, we can work with the tenant and the collection agency and make sure that we can work around their schedules.
Understood. I guess that would,
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
can I just ask one question? Based on the description where they make no sales that are, it's just a showroom, I'm thinking the dumpster, how often in a typical store do you have the dumpster emptied?
Very rarely.
I mean, it could probably be every couple months. I mean, in terms of, it sounds like they don't generate waste, right? Because if people aren't going there to buy products that are boxed.
Right. They have maybe 2 employees that work, full-time or part-time. Maybe they have like lunch or something there. So again, there's minimal waste being generated here.
Okay, so that's another factor to consider.
I guess I'm open to whatever the end solution is that fits the tenant, and in that, in my mind, as to say there is no loading zone, there's usually proof kind of behind that of what's being provided. So at least in the sense that it's a retail-only location, there's no, back stock other than setup and takedown, there's no deliveries per se. With the understanding that, yes, there's going to be change out of the showroom, but it's not a daily recurring thing. I think, again, it's just something to note on this potential approval here, and understanding what the scope is here and why we got to that conclusion. So, and just to be clear, that does the loading zone need to be waived then based on that discussion?
Too small for a loading zone, I think.
Well, you could identify one in the parking field, potentially, just to show one, because there's ample space there. As long as it was an off-hours one, it's not much difference from, you've had a couple other plans that have done that.
Okay.
I'd almost prefer to see that,
Okay, an off-hours loading zone.
yeah.
Okay. Then my only other comment is addressing, we didn't really talk in depth about landscaping. So is there any planning concerns on landscaping requirements here in this limited site, especially with setbacks? Any other considerations that we want to discuss because of the reduced parking setbacks? I understand that there's essentially the space to the east. So it's off the property, but just wanted to bring it up as a discussion point.
Yeah, we did ask them to update some landscape calculations just to verify that all the requirements were being met, but certainly where there's a reduction, you could, if you wanted to, ask for some additional screening. In this case, you're not, you don't have the same type of sensitive uses necessarily to address, but that's something that, and when you grant a waiver, if you feel that there's a reasonable condition, you can certainly do that.
Just a point of discussion, I guess, for planning commission, so that's all my concerns. Mr. Henry, probably get a turn on the mic.
I think this is going to have more landscaping than the other projects.
Along there? Yeah, it's not too much. I have a question for Mark. Are you comfortable with an administrative review and approval of the drainage system issues that have come up?
Yes. Yeah, I'm strongly going to work towards getting them to connect to existing storm sewer. I'm not in favor of a open discharge that would go through a trench drain that could potentially be clogged and cause an unsafe condition on the safety path. So that's.
Just want to make sure you're okay with the administrative sign off on that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
There isn't further discussion, I'll entertain a motion. Sorry, Tammy?
It does present a problem at times when I'm getting to the point of signing off on plans when it contains signage, because that's done under a separate review. So if the motion happened to be a conditional approval, if one of the conditions could be removing any reference to signage.
Understood that it would be a separate, signage is completed under separate signage application. Okay. If someone's ready to make a motion, I'll entertain one.
Chairman, I'll make a motion that relative to the 10-acre multi-tenant requirement, I move that the Planning Commission grants a waiver from the requirement that the ancillary use of mattress retail be developed in conjunction with a larger scale plan development project having multiple tenants with a total area of at least 10 acres for the plan state stamped, received 12622. The waiver be approved since the parcel is the last remaining parcel in a development consisting of 7 other tenants and does promote the economic development goals of the township.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Walker. Further discussion? Public discussion on the motion. Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Gross?
Yes?
St. Henry?
Yes.
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Angel?
Yes.
Bracken?
No.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, relative to the modification of the Brown Road standards, I move that the Planning Commission waives the following standards of Section 34.03 for PC 2022-5, Quattro Development for Plans State Stamped received January 26, 22, based upon the economic impact, the quality of the architectural design, and overall compatibility with the district, and that the following waivers are granted relative to the minimum side yard, the side yard setback, the front yard setback, parking calculations, and the parking setback waivers based upon the limited site size of the parcel. It's consistent with the properties to the north and provides for the basic historical parking demands of mattress stores. And further, that the parking is all provided in the rear of the building, consistent with the developments to the north.
A motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Urbanowski. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, public discussion? Roll call, please.
Walker?
Yes.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes?
Angel?
Yes.
Bracken?
No.
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Relative to the site plan, I move that the Planning Commission grants a conditional approval of the site plan submitted for PC 2022-05 Quattro Development located on the unaddressed parcel 0932-377-057, being the parcel north of 4983 South Baldwin Road, for modifications to the plan state stamped to receive January the 26th, 22. Those conditions, conditional approval are that the access drive on the south be relocated to the east as shown on an alternate plan submitted this evening. 2, that there be facade lighting on Baldwin Road. 3, that there be no loading zone required due to the showroom, this being a showroom only with no cash and carry products requiring a consistent loading zone. And 4 is that the signage that is to be reviewed by a separate ordinance and reviewed separately. Further, that the applicant comply with the Township Engineer's review letter of February the 10th, 2022, reflecting engineering standards required for the development.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Gingell. Discussion by the Planning Commission? Two things I would just ask that we also include is there was a comment in the engineer's review for the landscape calculation waivers or calculations to be updated. And I would also prefer the fire marshal's review comments to be incorporated in that for ambulance turning movements.
I believe they've reviewed the fire marshal's comments in their revised plans, but if you're comfortable with having that included, I would include that in the motion.
Okay. All right, amended motion presented, support by Mrs. Gingell. Amended support. Further discussion? Tammy?
I don't believe the motion mentioned that it is to be re-reviewed by the consultants. It was a conditional approval
Should.
adding that, but it does need to be re-reviewed by the consultants.
Okay?
Would you like to include that in your motion?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Angel?
Yes.
Bracken?
No.
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that leads us to our next item on our agenda, which is discussion of possible text amendment for open-air businesses. I'll turn it over to Tammy. I think the general kind of overview of this is that open-air businesses currently are presented to the ZBA instead of the Planning Commission, and there's a discussion on whether that was appropriate or not, that we feel that that should be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Currently in our township, essentially in our ordinance currently, the definitions and everything kind of defer back to, it would be something presented to the ZBA. Did I miss anything? Thoughts?
Well, you know, I always have something to say. So,
All good.
I mean, this came up because there's discussion of another ordinance being written that would add another category to these open-air businesses. And so as I was working with the township attorney on that ordinance, and they were contemplating adding a change to ordinance 78, the zoning ordinance, and as I read it, I thought, you know, looking at the criteria for an open-air business, you know, not taking vital parking spots, and I'm thinking the ZBA really normally is not the one that looks at a site plan and analyzes it. So if, before I start taking and modifying 78 to incorporate the other change that's coming, I thought we should discuss if it was even appropriate for it to be ZBA or whether it would be more appropriate to be the Planning Commission. I don't know if Mr. Walker, who sits on both, has any feelings on that.
I'm ambidextrous on that subject. I can see how it fits on either side. I don't know. I kind of think it even almost fits better on the ZBA, I think, but that's just my thoughts.
When I read it, with a thought, it was, if it's more related to a planning purpose, that it would be brought to the commission. But I also was considering that there's events and temporary event permits that aren't they granted through the board?
Correct. So
So-
you've got public gatherings, which are a one-day event with a tent that, in a craft show at a church. That is a one-day public gathering. These are for a permitted time frame. and the examples they give, for instance, you have a Christmas tree lot that are there for a month. You have a flower tent that is there for 4 months. You have the fireworks that, you know, we had it for flare up for a while, the number of those, that have their tent there for a month. So that's the difference between a public gathering involving a tent and an open-air business, which is not to be confused with a open-air, with a outdoor display. Outdoor display is your Kroger's that has a couple Christmas trees outside. So it is somebody that does not run that business, that is having something in their parking lot for a permit number of days.
So my other question would be is, should it be exclusively defined in this way versus just saying, like, if we change our permit process and or there's a certain threshold on that permit that prompts it to go to the planning commission, should we be setting that in this definition? I mean, it seems to me like there's some open air businesses that, I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Do they all go to the ZBA now? And I've just, okay, I've not realized that.
So they go to the ZBA, and then the ZBA makes a recommendation to approve or whatever?
It's not a recommendation, they approve or not, so.
So you mentioned the board, though, has, well, maybe I
It's
misunderstood.
for events.
That's like Canterbury
Yeah.
Villages.
The real board, the
Festivals
ZBA.
and things.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
mentioned,
misunderstood.
yeah, the Board of Trustees, there's another essentially like event permit that the Board of Trustees does. So there is a parallel to this, but it is not the same thing as what Tamu was trying to explain.
To, I believe, answer your question, Mr. Chair, this was more, what are your feelings on it? And then there would be change in wording based on adding the other type of use that's under discussion right now and anything that needs to change relevant to it coming to Planning Commission versus ZBA.
I guess just my knee-jerk thoughts was it seemed like not all of those are necessarily things that prompt coming here, but there would be a point in which if it reaches a certain size or purpose that it would. But if we want everything to go to a board, to a board or a commission, then fine. I mean, I guess if the ZBA was uncomfortable with it going to them, I don't.
I haven't talked to them at all.
Just to give you a historical perspective of this whole thing, in the last few years, there's been almost none of that.
Okay.
I mean, we used to be inundated with like fireworks, 10 or 15 fireworks and the Christmas trees and all that. But all that seems to, I'm not sure it's going to come back post-COVID here. Because we were very, very busy with, we had so much of that stuff, and didn't we, Tammy?
Absolutely.
And now, when was the last time we had such a thing?
It's been quite a while,
Yep.
and that's why I didn't really look at it until I was diving into it and thought, okay, so it says no vital parking spots. ZBA, one of the requirements in here was, you know, you have to have for the fire department, you have to have these proper buffers. So
Correct.
that when Susie getting out of the car with her mom in the parking lot sees the pretty flowers, she doesn't go through a vital circulation area to go look at the pretty flowers. So you are using, and it says not vital parking spots. And I then asked myself, who looks at a site plan? Who knows parking spots and circulation better than the planning commission? It was just a thought I had. You know, and there's also discussion, and when you go to the ZBA, you're a public hearing. So there's the discussion, as I'm speaking to the township attorney, that if we were to say it comes to the planning commission, we wouldn't necessarily say it is a special land use, because then you're held to the special land use criteria, but she did feel that it would be a public hearing. Because you currently have a public hearing when you go to the ZBA, because every ZBA case is a public hearing with a 300-foot notice.
So.
Do you need a public hearing for every Christmas tree lot?
Christmas tree lots are usually at like a church.
I think
and
that's the way it is.
So I was gonna say, I agree, I understand where you're coming from to bring it forth to us, Tammy. I think in interest of our very full agendas, and in the interest of nothing prompting it other than concern of, there hasn't been any concern of yet of Mr. Walker and his teammates' capabilities. So I would move that at this point in time to keep it as it sits. Now, as we further prompt discussions with this kind of business incubator and other things, that's where I was getting after, is maybe there is a point in which it's a collaborative effort or it's a threshold to where it gets punted over to us
And
as
by
a
the nature of
temporary
it,
site
as I'm
plan.
working with the attorney on this new use that we're discussing, you're going to see the text anyway. So maybe when you see the text, you'll start thinking, you know what, maybe it is us. So,
Yeah.
great conversation.
Yeah.
I know not to go full force in that direction, and if we end up going in that direction in the long run, then we do.
Yeah, I think there's, if other discussion points prompt a change, I guess.
I just have one request. Could we do this in a closed session so that my fellow ZBA members don't think I have just taken something away from them that they didn't want me to take?
I will be sure to show up and let them know it was all Tammy's idea.
All right.
Amy will come, sure. Further discussion? Okay, with that said, good discussion. Let's move along to our unfinished business, which would be PC case 2021-07, our 5-year master plan update. We had some thoughtful discussion over the last year, and that leads us to our hopeful next steps, as discussed in our planning commission workshop, to publish our, move forward on our 63-day draft review period. So if someone is willing to make the formal motion, as discussed in our workshop, we'll entertain it.
I just had one question. Is it just reading of this resolution here?
Is it best to read the whole adoption, or at least?
I would read it in the record and just say that, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Resolution requesting Township Board authorize distribution of draft master plan to review agencies, adjacent municipalities, and the general public. Whereas the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, MPEA, PA 33 of 2008, authorizes municipal planning commissions to prepare a master plan pertinent to the future development of the municipality. And whereas the Orion Township Planning Commission has prepared a draft master plan for the township to update and replace its previous master plan, meeting all statutory requirements set forth in the MPEA. And whereas the MPEA requires that the Planning Commission seek authorization from the Township Board for the distribution of the draft Orion Township Master Plan to the various entities listed in the MPEA for review and comment purposes. Now therefore, the Orion Township Planning Commission hereby resolves that the Planning and Zoning Director forward a formal request to the Township Board for staff to distribute the draft master plan, including the new future land use map, to neighboring communities and reviewing agencies as specified in the MPEA, and to make the draft available for review by the public on the township's website and via hard copy at the Planning and Zoning Department's offices. I hereby certify the foregoing resolution was approved by a majority of its members of the Orion Township Planning Commission at a regular meeting held on February 15th, 2022, in compliance with the Open Meetings Act.
We're actually February 16th, by the way.
Oh, goodness.
It's the 16th, sorry.
Sorry. February 16th.
All right, and motion by Mrs. Urbanowski, support by?
I'll support that with one request, that the motion include that the plan dated February the 10th, 2022 be the plan submitted.
I will accept that amendment, sure.
Except I was going to make the couple of minor changes that
Oh,
we
that's true.
discussed. So could we just say February 10th as amended by the discussion during the study session? Is that acceptable?
It's acceptable to me,
It's
yes.
acceptable to me as well.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Urbanowski,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
St. Henry,
Yes.
Angel,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Gross,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, with that said, there will be upcoming information published by the township for a future open house that will further discuss the draft that we just voted to publish and disperse. along with a future public hearing date, which will lead us hopefully very close to our adoption of the master plan we've been working on for the last year or so. Item number 9 on our agenda is public comments. Seeing no one here willing to make public comments, we have no written communications, but we do have a planner's report and education for home occupations community planner report update that was in our packet tonight. Anything you'd like to add, Ron?
Just brief overview. I think there's some interesting information in here. There was also a recent planning and zoning news article on this topic. You've seen, as we know, with the pandemic, a rapid increase in the number of people teleworking, working from home. We also see a significant increase in startup businesses where people who have participated in the Great Resignation are now looking for other opportunities for businesses, and they're starting businesses in their home. So it's just a really good time to potentially, somewhere down the road, take a look at your home occupation regulations. Your regulations, I believe, are set up where you can't use more than 30% of the floor area. So that covers most teleworking conditions, where you can, I think most people who are doing teleworking now are probably okay. But there's also the ability to do some light manufacturing and the like with the home occupation. And there's different levels of home enterprises depending on how far you want to go. So there's some discussion of that. I won't go into that in detail, but it's something you could consider whether or not under certain conditions you'd want to allow a slightly more intensive level of home occupation business, maybe in more of your in your village areas where you might be more tolerant of having a higher level of intensity. That could be something to think about. And then also recognizing that there's some home occupations you really can't regulate at all because they've been preempted by state statute, including the instruction of fine art music and the like, which has to be treated like a residential use. So that's already, the legislature's basically told you aren't going to be regulating that. So that's really the highlights. Just wanted to bring that to your attention and maybe something to think about in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the education piece.
Just
ahead,
a couple
please, go ahead.
thoughts on that. I think we've got to make a distinction between home occupations and working from home.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people that have other places where they're working, but they're working at home, and there's a distinction there. And there's also an issue of taxability. What properties are being taxed for home occupations versus other things. So there's a lot to it than just saying you can work from your house.
That is correct.
Good comments. All right, we have no additional committee reports or future public hearings scheduled at this time. That leads us to chairman's comments. Just would like to say thank you, everyone, for their input and thoughts on the master plan. Obviously, it's been a long time coming. We're in the home stretch, still have plenty of work to do, but I think it's a really comprehensive report here. So would like to move on to commissioner comments, starting with Mr. Bracken.
Nothing from me.
Mr. Urbanowski.
Nothing.
Mr. Gross.
Nothing.
Ms. St. Henry.
I'm good.
Mr. Walker.
Somebody got to talk.
Wow.
As you know, I'm pretty involved with the library, and we had a murder mystery thing last Friday night at the library. Such chaos. But it was great fun, and they're going to do it again, and if any of you like that sort of thing, please keep an eye out, because it'll happen once again. You can get dressed up if you want and do silly stuff. Not that I did.
When is the next book fair?
May something. Probably the second or third week in May. We are working on that. It's going to be a big one.
Mrs. Gingell.
No comments from me.
All right, with that said, we now have 7:59. If I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Do I have moved by Mr. Gross, supported by?
Ms. Urbanowski.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please stay with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries at 7:59.